Those of us who are on a path of what we might consider a pro-justice, pro-equality, pro-humanitarian path, we may sometimes lose faith in our path. We might feel it's futile, or that society is so entrenched and is so beholden and is so at the in the hands of these corrupt elites, from Epstein to Trump to Netanyahu to the corporations, Palantir, or these corporations that have who literally want to sediment themselves into the very structure of information, how information travels, and they want to kind of limit people's people's ability to prosper based on historical records, and that may or may not be in the interest, the political interest, the very authoritarian interests of these corporations, which are led by ideological, sometimes Zionist, pro-imperialist or pro-corporate entities. We may find that we might, lose faith, or might not be, lose some of that spring on our step. But I'm here to tell you that you are, if you believe in justice and freedom and equality, you are on the right side of history, and this is shown through history. This is shown throughout history. That's kind of the first point I'll make. Martin Luther King Jr., during his his political career, and obviously leading up to his death, he increased in popularity and made a big impact. But when he died, his his last year on this planet, his popularity decreased to a significant degree, partly because he was against the Vietnam War. And yet we remember, right now, right this moment, we remember Martin Luther King Jr. as a great man. We also remember the Vietnam War as a completely futile war, in the same way that we remember now that the Iraq War is a completely futile war. We must measure our progress of a species politically, socially, culturally, not through the prism, through the window of our own lifespan. We must think a little bit bigger. That's the first point I'll be making. Which kind of the but I would say even more, which probably is more closer to my heart, and more closer to our own foundation as species, is just look at nature. Look at nature and how nature thrives. In order to have a successful ecosystem in a forest, or even an allotment, to succeed, you need to be able to work with the elements. In order for all the plants to survive and thrive, you need to be able to work with the kind of what you have at your disposal. Now, currently, politics is such that they believe that you must remove all the weeds, what they consider the weeds, in order for this kind of society to thrive. But actually, this is the conventional gardening wisdom. But reality is that in order for a garden or an allotment to thrive, you need a diversity of thought. You need a diversity of plants and vegetation, and even a diversity of weeds, because the weeds are part of the whole ecosystem. In the same way that you cannot have, if you destroy the environment and you kill off the bees, you cannot have pollinating insects that lead to the proliferation of more plants down the line. Now look at right now. Why am I saying this? Look at right now the political forces that are anti-nature. Just look at them right now. Look at Trump and his complete disregard for fossil fuel and its contribution to the destruction of the environment, pollution. You look at obviously the evil state that is committing genocide on multiple fronts. Look at how much CO2 they are releasing. Look at their ecocide in terms of the release of pollution and release of biological waste matter into the water, into the domain of Lebanon, of Gaza, or of the West Bank. Because in the end, these people are not tied to nature. These people are not working with nature. They're working from something else. They're working from ideology, and this ideology is not rooted in nature. It's not rooted in our baseline need as a human, as a species, as a biological species. And this, to me, is a very clear indicator that they're on the wrong side of history, and this is made even more evident by the fact that Israel, upon supplanting and ethnically cleansing the land of historic Palestine, they, in order to cover up these villages, they installed European, perishable trees that are not suitable for that environment, and therefore, as a result of that, these also short lifetime trees, you see that they are kind of disintegrating as we speak. And instead of planting the native species of trees, these lands are becoming more bare and barren, and you can see below them the native villages that were already there prior to the cover up of these villages and these historical towns. So these people are not working with nature, and their ideology is reflected in nature's response to their perishable trees, which are causing a whole host of issues, like not only just disintegrated but also wildfires. There are record levels of increasing wildfire year on year in Israel because of their policy of basically implanting a Middle Eastern country with European trees, which of course isn't working. And of course, that's the same happening with the ideological underpinnings of this nation state that is supplanting a nation with a imperialist, British inspired kind of way of colonialism. And the reason why I say British inspired, because their blueprint is very much borrowed from British colonialists who oversaw the British mandate the mandate for Palestine, which led to this creation of Israel. And a lot of this during the back and forth between this plan to create Israel, obviously the British saw the collective punishment as a means to achieve their political goals, and Israel right now are following that same trajectory. They're following that same blueprint. They're following that same set of principles. Instead of seeing them as individuals, they see them as a collective, which is essentially a racist way of looking at Palestinians. So another thing I would say is that in the same way, of working with nature, understanding that life is short, and our lifespans are also short, we must also work to improve our well-being. We must work to improve ourselves, and in thus, by doing so, you're also tending to your own nature. You're tending to own your energy, and therefore you're able to recover, re-energize, and so that depression does not set in, and you're able to use your energy in a way which is more productive, in a way which is more flowing with nature, and more in line with your truest values, rather than being constantly bombarded by the mainstream news, by the thought of these corporations, these encroaching corporations that are just simply taking over in pursuit of the control and the limitation of the masses. So they are essentially anti-democratic. But we must not be deterred. We must be relentless. That can only be if we look after ourselves and don't burn the candle at both ends. So there's so much more to be said about this, but if you feel like giving up, remember, look after yourself, look at nature, look at how history works, how history is as a kind of a long trajectory, also understand that whatever is false that cannot withstand the test of time, and also understand how more people are aware of what's going on, more people, and therefore this is reflected in art and our culture. This will also the culture. Somebody said, someone I do not believe in, do not I particularly agree on politically, but he said that politics is downstream of culture, and that culture is being changed, even if there are attempts to control the masses. There's so much more to be said, but I'll leave it at that. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. That'd be very much appreciated. Thank you.